What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Stub Stories. Over the last almost 20 years, I've been to a billion shows, and I have the ticket stubs to prove it, and I've got a story that goes along with every single one of them. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to split this page up into two shows. The first show, which you're about to watch, will focus on Something Corporate in Yellowcard back in 2004, and also the 2005 Vans Warped Tour stop in Northampton at the 3-County Fairgrounds. So yeah, like I teased off the top, we'll be splitting this page of the book into two different Stub Stories episodes. The first episode, this one, will focus more on Yellowcard and Something Corporates 2004 Spring Headliner, co-headliner, and then also the 2005 Vans Warped Tour. So starting off, Yellowcard and Something Corporate, April 27th, it was a Tuesday, 2004 at the Palladium in Worcester. Went with my buddy Mike, both big Yellowcard fans, both huge Something Corporate fans. I think this was the second time I saw Something Corporate, and I think this was the first time I saw Yellowcard, if I remember correctly. The format opened, which was cool. I wasn't a huge fan of the format. Later became a really big fan of fun. But at the time, format kind of opened every show I went to for a while, it felt like. So they were cool. I thought this tour was super interesting because you put two bands that both feature very prominently non-traditional punk rock instruments. So yeah, Something Corporate had a piano front and center. Lead singer played it. Lead singer climbed all over it. It was very evident almost every single song they did. Yellowcard had a violin player, which they're really famous for. During the parts when he wasn't featured, he'd be running over the stage, singing backup, doing backflips, cool stuff like that. So both bands are awesome. I want to say Something Corporate was touring on their record, North. I think it's their second record. Yellowcard was still out there on Ocean Avenue. I do remember Something Corporate covering Hey Ya by Outkast. The rest of their set, I'm guessing, was like, If You See Jordan, Punk Rock Princess, Woke Up in a Car, kind of that whole era. They might have covered something else too. Maybe like Bittersweet Symphony. I kind of remember that being a thing. But I don't remember if it was that tour or a different time. I definitely saw them cover it. Yellowcard, if I remember correctly, played last. I don't remember if they did a cover, but they might have. That might have been their whole shtick for that tour, was both bands do a cover song. It was awesome. Seeing both of them co-headline the Palladium was great. Two of my favorite live bands, especially at that era. The funny thing about that show is I actually met my friend Alicia there through Mike and one of his friends who was one of her friends. Fast forward 6 years and we became best friends. To this day, she's one of my best friends ever. So we actually met at that show and then didn't reconnect until 6 years later. So it's kind of cool moment in history. It looks like this was comped. There's no price tag, just a 000. So we used to do Street Team for Mass Concerts, which promotes the Palladium shows. So I'm guessing we both got in through that. That's how most of the Palladium shows I went to back then were because of that. I have this cover of Alt Press magazine featuring the guys from NoFX. I love NoFX. At the time, I don't think I listened to them as much as I do now. And we just happened to grab whatever was available for after the show. I remember the guys from Yellowcard signing this magazine. Their autographs are still on here. But I remember asking the violin player for NoFX, being like, hey, dude, can you sign this? I think I said, this magazine with naked men all over it or something stupid. I don't know. I was 15 years old. And instead of him just being I think I was 16 years old. Instead of just, taking it and signing it and just, moving on with his life, he, had to prove how punk he was. And he's like, oh, this is actually NoFX. Just so you know, we love NoFX. I was like, all right, cool. My bad. Sorry, dude. So he actually signed it and then wrote YC loves NoFX. It's cool, man. Me too. But whatever. I was younger at the time. So that's fun. And then the other show I wanted to focus on with this episode was the 2005 Vans Warped Tour. Prior to this, I'd only been to the 04 Warped Tour, which is actually going to be talked about in our next episode. But the '05 Warped Tour is super legendary. So this show took place on Monday, August 15th, 2005. The thing about that Warped Tour was all the bands are booked back in the winter. So this is the very end of 2004, the very beginning of 2005. Warped Tour books all their bands for that summer's run, and they just kind of happened to strike gold. This day, I saw bands like Avenged Sevenfold, who ended up becoming massive. The Dropkick Murphys were on this. My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy were easily the two biggest bands on this tour. They both were like super rotation on MTV, all over the radio, kind of like too big to be on Warped Tour, but they had already signed up, so they of course like played it. And it was wild. The Offspring played that. Mest, Story of the Year, who were like pretty huge. Atreyu was huge in the heavier aspect of all that stuff. I do remember watching Atreyu and not liking them at all, but they had like lime green guitars, which was kind of strange. Reggie and the Full Effect, Motion City Soundtrack, MXPX. It was the second time I ever saw MXPX. But the coolest thing about it, actually, it might have only been the only time I saw MXPX, but the Transplants played, which was Travis Barker from Blink and Tim Armstrong from Rancid. That they did one Warped Tour, and it was that one. I just remember being like having my mind blown that I was seeing Travis Barker play because I had never seen him at that point. It was so cool. Played all Transplant songs. I remember they covered White Riot by The Clash. That was awesome. The thing I remember most about that day is it downpoured like really early on, and this was at fairgrounds out in like Western Mass area. So everything was strictly mud. I had these all white audio skate shoes. I threw them away on the way home. I didn't even wear shoes home. As we were leaving the parking lot that day, I remember just like taking off my shoes, tossing them into a trash can. It was disgusting. But I remember when MXPX was playing, people were just like hucking mud at them. They just kept going. They didn't stop at all. It was just so sick. It was the most like punk rock day ever. Fall Out Boy was huge at the time. The starting line was relatively big then too. I remember being really close for them. Yeah, it was awesome. That was my last time going to Warped Tour for almost like 8 years, I think. 7 or 8 years. I didn't go after that. It wasn't really my scene, but that was a really, really, really cool day. So, yeah, shout out to those shows. Cheers.